Hi everyone. So today we are going to look at the concept of sovereignty. In the previous video, I already spoke about power. Now, today, the second main key concept, which is sovereignty. So, see, these two key concepts, which are of power and sovereignty, throughout your global politics course, you would be referring them, right? Because these are the base of any state. When it comes to power, you happen to talk about whether these countries are powerful or not. How powerful? You consider a lot of different factors. It can be political, economic, social. Lot of factors you take into consideration. Another thing that the base of any country is sovereignty. A country may have population, border, government, but may not have sovereignty. So that means country is not considered as a sovereign independent nation. For example, Palestine. Palestine has all the three things, right, which I mentioned, but it does not have sovereignty. What is sovereignty? Supremacy. Supremacy over its land internally and even recognized by the other countries or in a position to build relationship with the other countries, right? So internally and externally, that country is supreme enough, right? That's called sovereignty. So the concept of sovereignty is really an important one, along with the concept of power. And then the third key concept, which is legitimacy. Again, you will refer this term very frequently, but this term, we do not actually go into depth. We just refer whether the action of the government is legitimate enough or not, okay? So a country is a sovereign one, but all the norms, all the policies and majority of the things are the illegal one. The legitimacy of that government, right, is weakening. So high chances that that country is rapidly becoming a failing nation, failed state, right? So these are some of the terms which are around sovereignty. So let's get started first to understand the term or the definition of sovereignty by the IB guidebook. All right. So sovereignty characterizes a state's independence. So first thing, that this independence, neither dependence nor interdependence. It's independent. That the state is independent. Its control over territory and its ability to govern itself. So that means that state is independent, that state has control over its territory, and it knows how to govern itself, right? Further, how states use their sovereign power is at the heart of many important issues in global politics. I have already mentioned that. Some theorists argue that sovereign power is increasingly being eroded. Eroded means diminishing, right? So, which school of thought is it? Which is saying that sovereign power is increasingly being eroded by aspects of globalization, such as global communication and trade. So that means this school of thought is saying that the concept of sovereignty is eroding, or there is a rapid decline in the concept of sovereignty because of globalization, which is taking place through communication and trade. Can you guess which school of thought is it? Liberalist, right? Liberalist is the one which believes in globalization, which believes in this communication and trade, and which says that country needs to be here interdependent, right? Whereas realist ones say that they do not require to be interdependent, but they require to be independent. Now further to this one, it says other argues, so the opposing school argues that sovereign state exercise a great deal of power when acting in their national interest. I'm sure that you have guessed by this time that which school of thought is it. This is realist school of thought, right? Realist school of thought. They believe that still there are state actors which are acting in the national interest, and the concept of sovereignty cannot be eroded. Clear this definition of sovereignty, what this one is talking about. Now further to this one, I have a hilarious video for you to watch. And now this video is, I'll just give you the context and then I'll provide the link of the main presentation to you in the description box below. You can access the presentation and you can watch this short video. This short video is actually talking about the context of the Westphalian Treaty, right? What was that Westphalian Treaty? So Westphalian Treaty, which was signed in 1648, right? After 30 years of European war. Now, this video talks about Catholic. So these are the two religious sects over there, Catholic and Protestant. So Catholic ruling till 1618, clashes and conflict between Catholic and Protestant. And then this video talks about balance of power between Catholic ruling class, which is Austria, Spain, Germany, versus German Protestant Holy Empire, Denmark, Sweden, right? Now, these all countries were fighting during that time. Now, 30 years war between two groups, which took place and concluded by this Westphalian Treaty in 1648. What were the consequences of this Westphalian Treaty? Number one, emergence of nation state. After this one, there was the rise of the nation state. State secular system was considered, right? Emergence of new state came into power. After watching this video, you will get to know about this Luxembourg and all these things. Appearance of realism school of thought, because they started believing more in terms of nationalism, right? What was the impact on international politics? Non-intervention was considered during this treaty, that we are not going to intervene in the other states' matters. Political independence was back during this time. Italy Renaissance started, okay, since then. Treaty recognized the new boundaries of European states, including Portugal. So these were the outcome of the Treaty of Westphalia, which took place in 1648 after 30 years of war. Apart this one, I would like to mention that as in one of the videos I have already discussed, that to create a state, four things are important. First is border. Second one, its population. Third one, government. Fourth one, sovereignty, supremacy over the land. And fifth one, recognition, right? A country may have all the four, but not the recognition, right? For example, Kosovo. Kosovo has all the four, but it has not been recognized by all the 193 states of United Nations. So the Treaty of Westphalia 1648 established the idea of statehood, right? Which brought the idea of diplomacy and non-intervention into the practice. That was the main idea. International legitimacy is essential for a state to be considered as an independent sovereign country. Then who brought this one? The Montevideo Convention. Who brought? Montevideo Convention. When? In 1933. So that outlined the feature of sovereign nation state, where specifically it said that apart these four things, recognition is highly recommended for a state to be called as a nation state. I hope this thing is clear to you about 1648 and 1933, the idea of the statehood generated in 1648, and the idea of the whole definition along with the recognition came in this Montevideo Convention. So this short hilarious video is all about that. Okay. Now we go further, and in this video, so this is of 13 minutes long video, and this video talks about the fundamental feature of this sovereignty. And sovereignty, it's not only the fundamental feature of unitary state, but even the federal state. What is unitary state? Where the center of power lies in just one state, right? And federal state, where the center of power is just not only at one point, but there are the different states which are sharing the power. For example, USA, which is the classic example of federal, UK, which is the classic example of unitary state. The concept of sovereignty is a contested concept. Okay, so when I say contested, so that means there are different interpretation and perspectives to understand the concept of sovereignty. So, for example, in federation, you may argue that where do you locate sovereignty? Okay, where do you locate sovereignty in the world of power politics? So, like this, you will keep arguing on the concept of this sovereignty. Okay, now I'll give you a little bit context of this video and then I will allow you to watch it. So this video talks first about the legal norm of sovereignty, and this video says that we believe in the legal notion of sovereignty. All right, it does not believe in the political notion of the sovereignty. So legal means that sovereignty has been instituted legally by that state, right? Then this video starts talking about that what about the secessionist movement, okay, which are taking place across the world. Where do you secessionist movement, where do you locate the term sovereignty? Then this video goes on in historical background of the concept of sovereignty. So this video says that this concept of sovereignty was propounded by Jean Baudin, who is a French jurist and who coined this term in 16th century. All right. Sovereignty. Now, further this video talks about different features of sovereignty. So one is supreme. The second one is absolute. Then the third one is perpetual. And the fourth one is indivisible. All right. So Jean Baudin actually considered these four features of sovereignty. Supreme means that the sovereign is a supreme leader or supreme leader on its land. Absolute means authority of the sovereign is not subject to any internal or external limitations, right? Absolute, that no one can limit sovereignty. So that's absolute form of government. And perpetual means that it will just go on, endless, right? Whether government's coming or new government coming or stepping down, but sovereign will perpetuate. It will go endlessly. Indivisible, you can't just divide sovereignty amongst the states. Now further this video talks about Thomas Hobbes after Jean Baudin. Thomas Hobbes. If you remember, in one of the videos I have already spoken about social contract theory, and in social contract theory there were the three thinkers: Hobbes, Locke and Rousseau. Hobbes was the one who was one of the founders of realist school of thought, who considered human nature as a nasty one, and he focused more on absolute and indivisible. Absolute and indivisible form of sovereignty, right? He admitted different types of regimes and location of sovereignty, but for him preferable one was monarchy. So that means sovereignty is resided by different forms of the government, but for Thomas Hobbes it was monarchy which was the preferable one. For Baudin and Hobbes there were three different types of legitimate sovereignty. One was democratic, for both of them, right? Baudin and Hobbes. Second one was aristocratic. Those rich people were aristocratic, where sovereignty resides, right? Oligarchy or aristocracy. And the third one is monarchical. So out of these three, Hobbes said that I believe the more efficient form of sovereign is monarchical. Whereas Rousseau, now if you remember, then the third person over here was Rousseau. Rousseau. Okay, so Rousseau believed in democratic, okay, legitimate sovereignty is democratic sovereignty. So these are the different kinds of sovereignty where they happen to talk about that where sovereignty resides. So what you need to understand that government or the country can have any form of the government. Sovereignty is perpetual, okay, it resides in whichever form of the government that country is having. Sovereignty will reside there. Now apart these features which we discussed, these one, supreme, absolute, perpetual and indivisible, so there are a few more features of sovereignty. Permanence, that means that sovereignty lasts as long as independent state exists, okay, it does not come into the power with the new government, but it lasts long there. Exclusive, that means it cannot be shared by the other state. Exclusive, permanent. Another, inalienable, you cannot separate. Inalienable, okay, that state can't part with its sovereignty. It's life and soul of the state. It can't be alienated without destroying the state, right? And then I have already spoken about indivisibility and absoluteness. Now apart this one, you will see that I am talking about these different forms, political forms of sovereignty. Apart this one, monarchical, you have the legal, which is supported by the law of the land. Political, which is considered as the people's will, right? And then you have de facto and de jure sovereign. De facto means de jure is supported by law, but the actual power will be held by someone else, is called de facto, okay? De jure, which is supported by law. De facto, actual power is held by someone else. For example, in the case of India, prime minister is more powerful than president. But who is the de jure? President is the de jure. Who is the de facto? Prime minister is the de facto. The similar example can be seen in UK. De jure is king over there, and de facto is the prime minister, right? So de jure, de facto, these are the different kinds of sovereignty, or you can call it that how sovereignty is located differently in the different parts of the world. I hope this one is clear. This video talks about this, and I have given some added information about this. Now further we proceed and we see the next video. Now the next video is actually of very short, 4 minutes, and it is covering first the definition of sovereignty, then it is giving the historical context of sovereignty, and the third, it is talking about the different challenges of the sovereignty. So now in the challenges of this sovereignty, this video happens to talk about the responsibility to protect, right? And this video talks about globalization, then interstate war. It talks about trade, communication, crimes, drugs, all these things. So this is a good video which is opening the floor to have many more discussion around this video, right? I go further and I talk about what are the sources of sovereignty. That means, what do I mean by sources of sovereignty? That means from where sovereignty is deriving its own supremacy, right? So one can be the possession and use of force. That when do we consider a state as a powerful sovereign state, right? So one would be use of force, right? Use of force. So can I say that the sovereignty can be measured, or a country can be most sovereign, powerful nation, less sovereign, or a most powerful nation can attack another country and diminish its sovereignty? So yes, I probably may say it by using the force, right? In case if a country has a most powerful forces and may attack another country and destroy its sovereignty because that country did not take permission from the other country, right? So one thing that from where it is deriving its sovereignty. So one is the use of force, international. Second one is international. law and norms, right? That it can derive from international laws and the norms through which the state has been created, right? As we have 194 nations in United Nations, so there are the international laws and norms through which the state has been created. Kosovo has not been recognized, so it is not getting its full source or full power of the sovereignty, right? The third one is recognition by other states. It is very important that other states are recognized, then it would be getting its sovereignty, right? And the fourth one is consent of the governed through political participation, that whoever is ruling in that sovereign nation, that government should get consent by the people, right? So these are the sources of the sovereignty. Do not get confused so much over here. It's just talking about that from where sovereignty derives its own power, okay? And what are the sources from where this thing is happening? These are not limited to just these four, right? The fourth one is consent. So these are not just limited to this one, but you can add many more points. Now we move further and we go to the challenges to state sovereignty. So briefly, I just told you that what could be the challenges to the state sovereignty. So first, it can be considered globalization. Okay. Externally growing integration of the world in terms of politics, economics, communication, and culture. It is a process that undermines traditional state sovereignty, right? Because countries are now joining with the other countries to get maximized benefits, right? So this can impede their sovereignty. Second one is transnational crimes. Transnational crimes. This can be another challenge which has led to the accelerating movement of illegal drugs, counterfeit goods, smuggled weapons, laundered money, trafficking in poor and exploited people. They all are challenging state sovereignty. Another can be ethno-national movements. I mean, identify more with a particular culture than with the state, okay? So that is ethnicity, right? They do not just identify with the whole nation, but they identify more with a particular culture. That's called ethnicity, right? So having experienced discrimination or persecution, many of these groups are now taking collective action in support of national self-determination. Kurd movement, right? You have Catalan movement, you have Quebec movement, you have Chechnya movement, ethno-national movements, right? Which are spread across the world. And then there is supranational feeling. Supranational feelings. So it's an international organization or union whereby member states transcend national boundaries or interests to share in the decision making and vote on issues pertaining to the widening group, right? They just don't want to limit themselves to their own borders, but they want to go beyond it and they want to collaborate with many more countries. Supranational feeling. And the fifth one here is humanitarian intervention. Is a means to prevent or stop a gross violation of human right in a state. So in case if a state be having so many human right issues, then state A may intervene in the name of humanitarian intervention, where state A is either capable enough, willing, and state B is incapable and unwilling to protect its own sovereignty. So this is the concept around humanitarian intervention, which can again challenge state sovereignty, right? So these are some of the challenges to state sovereignty, but definitely you can come up with more points that what are those factors which are challenging state sovereignty. Now further to this one, we have this question from IB: is state sovereignty being eroded, right? And now this screenshot is from Pearson notebook, and there are the 5 claims and counterclaims over here. So the first claim is on the basis of border. Okay, border. So that means this is a claim which agrees that state sovereignty is becoming less significant. Eroding means less significant, right? Weakening. Or counterclaim that no, it remains the same. Now when I say you, so can you just guess that which theory would be coming on your left side and which theory would be coming on your right side, which still believes in sovereignty, which says that sovereignty is becoming less significant. Liberalism, right, is becoming less, and realism, right? So these are the theories which are connected to this one. So the first point is of border. Now what it says, that borders are decreasing in significance. Decreasing, right? Borders checks between states are disappearing, particularly in the European state. Due to Schengen agreement, states are affected by issues that cross borders. For example, climate change, global terrorism, and migration. They are just going beyond the borders, right? So this claim says that sovereignty is becoming less significant. However, borders still define independent states. States still decide their own economic and political policies within their borders. Some states maintain border checks. Others still act independently or unilaterally. National identity still matters and remains a unique identifying and unifying force, right? So this one says that it is still practiced. Now you have to tell me the example over here. Okay, the one example is already written over here, which is of Schengen, which you can use for the claim. You have to tell me that which example would you use over here. All right. Now the second set of claim and counterclaim. So the second set is on globalization, right? So now this one says economic globalization is reducing the economic importance of states. Many states are reducing barriers to trade and are joining trade agreement. For example, Trans-Pacific Partnership, European Union, or you can consider any regional organization from your region or from your continent. There is increasing freedom of movement for people and goods. Multinational corporations also have a lot of power. Some are wealthier than small states and can force states to change their economic policies in return for investment. All right, so this is how the globalization is changing the face of sovereignty. However, counterclaim says economic policy, for example, import, export, tax, trade, partnership, is still decided by nation states. Multinational corporations are undoubtedly powerful, but resolving major economic crisis requires action by nation state. For example, the financial crisis of 2008 was resolved by nation states and international organizations. Bailing out failing multinational banks was funded by nation state as lenders of last resort. So that means still nation states approach is highly recommended to bring the stability in the international economy. So these are the two set of claim and counterclaim considering border and globalization. Then in the next page you have now these two sets, right? Again, so this one is of IGOs and this one is of humanitarian intervention. Okay, let's see what it says. Intergovernmental organizations are becoming more numerous and more powerful. Okay, they are increasing more in number. You also know that earlier we had just a handful of organizations, but now we have so many regional and intergovernmental organizations. One of the most powerful organizations, European Union, has supranational powers and can make laws and enforce them on its member states. Other IGOs recognize that states face shared challenges and try to resolve these through collective actions. However, states choose to join IGO. Okay, state may choose not to join IGOs also. So it ultimately depends on nation state, right? Then the next point, it says international conventions such as the responsibility to protect no longer regard state sovereignty as absolute one, because United Nations under this responsibility to protect can intervene in the other states. Then you have these examples over here. However, states can still abuse human rights or break international law with impunity. That means without even any charges also, or without any punishment. Decisions about external intervention are taken very carefully and are dependent on international agreement. Intervention was possible in Libya. However, when the Syrian government used chemical weapons, there was no intervention. The majority of borders are respected by nation state. Violation by other nation states have decreased and are very rare. So this is realist view where they say that still it is in control. Then the last set of claim and counterclaim. This is on the known state actors. Known state actors. So known state actors such as terrorist group are frequently challenging state sovereignty and attempting to define new borders. For example, large parts of Syria, Iraq came under the control of Islamic State, and Nigeria, Boko Haram took over parts of the country. Now here, this one talks about that how militant group, they are actually controlling While it is true that known state actors are challenging state sovereignty in a number of states, this is not widespread. There remains broad international consensus about what makes a state legitimate in international law. So these are the 5 sets of claim and counterclaim, which debates in such a way where one school of thought this says sovereignty is eroding. Another school of state, it says that sovereignty is not getting eroded. So now this is where both the schools of the thoughts, they are just mentioning in this paragraph. Okay. Actually, in my lap, my cat is there, which is continuously just, disturbing me, and I'm not able to completely focus on my recording. Nevertheless, we move on with the last slide. Okay, so now this last slide of sovereignty, this is a reading task. You will be able to see this reading task in the speaker's notes, all the tasks which I'm gonna distribute in the class. You have to open this site. I understand completely some those biases of World 101. However, we still go ahead with the formation of the groups and discussing some of the important topics. As I figure it out, that how self-determination shaped the modern world is really an important one to understand sovereignty. Another one is understanding the constructive and destructive nature of nationalism, the European Union, responsibility to protect, tank sanction separatist, stateless nation. All these are very important topics to discuss. So under this one, we will be discussing that. These are some of the case studies of sovereignty. I have already pasted the videos on the site. You can have a look. And then the last one is some of the IB questions on the concept of sovereignty. These are the 10 questions which IB has asked so far on sovereignty. Right. So this is where we finish the concept of sovereignty. I hope this video was informative for you. In case if you have any doubt, either you can ask me in the class or you can post your message in the comment box below. Thank you.